Hey everyone, this is Colin McGinnis, and we just finished an episode with Matt Rosenthal talking about my career and my experiences. Had a great time discussing the hard work, perseverance, and things that led me to be successful. I hope there's some value in it for you. Hope you enjoy listening to the show.
Hey everybody, Matt Rosenthal digging in. I want to thank you so much for joining the show again today. I've got a phenomenal guest. He's got an awesome background. He's really led and managed and been a part of some really major companies, initiatives, innovation. And his story is, I think it's intriguing, and I know you'll find it to be of some value to you. There's a few things you're going to take from this. One is hard work. Two is perseverance. Three is innovative thinking. Those things are when you put those together, they're so powerful. And so today I want to introduce to you Colin McGinnis. Colin, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning.
Well, I think the best place to start, and good morning to you too. I think the best place to start is we see now, if we look you up, look on your LinkedIn, look on your social media, we can all see, what you've achieved and kind of who you are. But I think that starting at the beginning is really valuable. And I know you have a really interesting story. I think maybe some moving around Air Force bases and things like that. So can you take us back to how it all started for you?
Sure, Matt. I go all the way back to, I think everybody that's successful can reach back to their upbringing, certain pivotal moments in their life. And for me personally, I was raised, my father was in the military and the intelligence agency business. And my mother was extremely hardworking. And so she raised myself and two brothers, so three boys. So there was a lot of time where my father was off doing different things in service of the country. But when he was home, extremely disciplined, extremely direct, and kind of shaped and molded directionally where I wanted to go in my life. But I truly get a lot of my drive and perseverance from my mother. And knowing that she, had to raise three boys, put up with three boys. And if you've raised boys or been around boys, we're sweaty, we're stinky, we fight, and she always did it with grace. And because of her background, she taught all of us, or instilled in all of us, hard work, respect for your fellow human, do unto others. It's you've seen those posters now, the various stores have all those posters about, everything I learned in life, I learned when I was a kid, look both ways and do those things. Well, my mother was the epitome of that. And I think that shaped, me as a young person that I took into my adulthood. And ultimately, I had a background in athletics, and when I got into my first careers in retail, I learned real quick that if you work hard and you treat people right and you're respectful to the customer, and you do what's asked of you, and you do a little bit more, or you do just what's common courtesy, people recognize that. And I use it even now. There aren't enough people that try to be good. They may be good people, but they don't try to be good. And I learned by doing that you can go far in life.
That is phenomenal. They may be good people. Say that again.
They may be good people, but they don't try to be good. So there's a whole lot of folks that if you give direction to, you say, hey, I need you to do this particular task, or I need you to take care of this particular client. They do that, but they don't take it that extra mile. And again, it's old fashioned, but I hold the door for people when I go places, not because I'm trying to get anything extra or whatever, but you open the door and you usually wind up having a great interaction. They usually laugh and go, hey, are you going to be here all day, or something like that. And it's just part of how you're raised and part of how you're instilled. It's that little extra where you try to do things the right way, and it's basically how you were taught. And that I've worked on, so I do it with my peers, I do it for people that I worked for, and I do it the people that work for me. It's part of that servant leadership. That again, there's been a lot of buzzwords that have come out the last 15 or 20 years that were a lot of how all of us started, and that's part of how you were taught to be successful in the industry.
When you were giving the example of opening the door, I thought about, you've heard people say, look, just if you're walking down the street, smile at the people that are walking past you and watch them smile back. And it's true. Like when you lead in that way, it does sort of cause a reaction. It's almost like that mirror effect. Like if you're putting that out, odds are you're going to get back what you put out.
100%. 100%. It's you're and you've heard the cliches. Your team is only as good as the weakest link and things like that. And part of that is true, but part of it is if you develop all of the folks on your team to do multiple roles and to do multiple things, and you put out the positive energy and you teach people to do the right things. And I think, quite frankly, part of that goes back to my sports background as a kid. I did, the typical, baseball, football, basketball, track, all of those different things. And in every single sport, there's an individual aspect or component where you have certain amount of responsibilities as it relates to the team. But there's more about a team concept because your teammates count on you, and they count on you to do your job. And quite frankly, if you can exceed at your job, one of your teammates may be having an off day. Well, that same thing works in business. I may have a bad day one day, but one of my teammates picks me up, and or vice versa. And that's huge. And not enough people look for that. And quite frankly, I even when I interview people today and when I talk to people and I look at onboarding folks, I look a little bit for folks that, and by the way, it doesn't matter what sport or what team event you've done. If I know you've done the commitment, I know you've been out there when you've had to practice when it's hot, or you've been there in the fourth quarter when you're behind 30-0 and you still showed up and you still finished the game. That means a lot because you don't win every time. And if you're able to go out there and succeed and do your job and do it to the best of your ability, you're going to succeed the next time and the time after that. Your time will come. And I look forward to that, trying to find the right folks to work with and to put on the team.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I've experienced, but being able to lose, I don't even like the word, because it's really, when losing to me or failing at something in the moment, I see it as an opportunity really just to improve.
100%.
So I try to impart that on the people that are around me and the people that work in my company. But being able to lose, as I just bring it back for a second to your upbringing, all of the things that you shared, discipline, being spoken to in a direct way by your dad, respect, treating people the right way, and on, all the things you just mentioned, did they not build like a confidence in you, like a sort of a self-confidence, a certainty that allows you to lose and not feel like you're losing? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, I think what it established in me is don't get too high on the wins, don't get too low on the losses. I actually had the privilege of playing football. Was not that great, but at Oklahoma State in college, and played there for a couple of years, and truly was more of a practice player than a player. But at that time I was there, there was a gentleman, you've heard of him, Barry Sanders, obviously Hall of Fame running back, best running back ever. But one of the things that he was famous for is when he would score a touchdown, he would always hand the ball to the referee. And that same mindset has been with me through, act like you've been there before, act like you're going to be there again. And back to your point on the losing and the winning or whatever, you just do it gracefully. You do it gracefully. You celebrate the wins, but you don't go crazy. Just like when you're defeated, and I loved your point, when you lose, you learn from it. It is about a continuous improvement. what did I do? Again, whether it's a project, whether it's a particular initiative, if you tie it back to the business world, oh, hey, I didn't get this client, or I lost this deal, or whatever it was. Why? What happened? And everybody can, go back after the fact, and you should, and just take a list of what went well, what didn't go well, even for the ones that you're successful on. And it's that continuous improvement mindset. How do I get better? Okay, if I lost this race, how do I run it faster? Everybody has limits. There's only one fastest person in the world. There's only one, richest person in the world. There's only one greatest this, greatest that. Everybody has a set of limits, but how do you continue to strive to achieve it? Doesn't mean you lower your standards, doesn't mean you lower your bar. You still try to raise to meet that bar.
I'm reading a book right now. It's interesting, and it's just at this point where it's talking about goals, and that the writer points out that, we all know that goals are they're really just dreams unless you actually put some action behind it.
Right.
But the concept of, well, how do you really reach your goals? It's by having standards. And if you have high enough standards, whatever you set them at, it's the standard that you set yourself to that will help you reach your goals. So like, let's say you want to make X amount of money this year. Well, you can set the goal, but if you don't raise your standards and then line everything else up with that, you're not going to reach it. So standards it was a different way to look at standards. When I read this, I was like, wow, that's so true. I've just never thought of it in terms of like raising your standards. And that's how you really reach your goals, which is an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, no, I don't know the name of the book. Would love to get it from you, but that's spot on. That's exactly.
I'm show you the book right now.
There you go.
This is for Ed. This is Ed Milet. The Power of One
More. One More. Love that.
This guy is phenomenal. This book is phenomenal. Jim, we got to send him a copy of the book.
But I love that because you're spot on. And again, equating it back to a sports activity or a business activity or whatever it is it's when you set that goal, goes back to that hard work and discipline. Okay, if it's the old, you're going to get the same results if you do what you've always done. Well, the reality of it is if I want to lift weights and get a new squat max that is XYZ pounds, I've got to do one more rep. I've got to put more weight on. I've got to get a little bit better, stronger, faster, all these different things, because you'll never achieve that. It's exactly the same in the business world. I can set a goal that I want to have 100 clients this year. But if I don't actually call anybody, if I'm waiting for them to all come to me, doesn't matter. I can have the best plan in the world when they come to me, but if I'm not seeking them out, I'm not going to get 100. So you absolutely have to adjust your standards. And part of that is, and you'll laugh, I spent a lot of my career out in the field. And when you're out in the field, you're constantly making decisions and reacting. And I'm going to use the term, you're shooting from your hip, but you're making informed decisions based on your historical perspective of what you've done.
That's called wisdom.
That's exactly right. When you move into a corporate setting, in a corporate environment, and you spend a lot of times in meetings, you're actually now creating the future versus reacting to somebody's current. And I find myself now when I'm in meeting rooms or boardrooms or things like that, we're spending a lot of time on a whiteboard, and we're whiteboarding out, again, standards, structures, processes, goals. How do you achieve them? And it's the old vision, mission, objective. Just like companies build, you do the same thing, and so now you're creating somebody else's reality, but you have to provide the roadmap of how to get there, and that's a big difference. So
that's so powerful. I do need to bring you back to we got so into this great stuff, we skipped over your whole journey.
Okay, no
So
problem.
before we go back there, you mentioned two things that were so crucial. You didn't say it like this, but what I took from what you said was be humble. You said it in
100%.
different ways, but I picked it up from you. And it's funny. I was on a phone call the other day with a prospect who I believe is going to be hiring us. And the conversation, when that conversation just gets to be so comfortable and you just can feel like you're in alignment and it's just going great. And
Right.
One of the women on the phone said to me, she's like, wow, you're so humble considering everything you've achieved. And I don't really stop and think about that. And it's like, it's so important that like you never forget how you started. Everything could be gone tomorrow. Like whatever you're working for, I mean, you don't know what tomorrow is going to be. So to me, like every day is like the start of the same process over and over of treating people well, treating clients well. Every conversation, you don't know where it's going to go. It's like a very fun, exciting experience, like every day. To not be humble in that process is a turnoff to people. Like
100%.
nobody wants to be around somebody who's egotistical, who knows everything. And so you said it in a different way, but that really struck me. And so I noted it. And the other thing you mentioned just now was creating your future. I mean, that's everything. We choose what's going to happen based on the decisions that we make. So you can choose to go to the gym today. You can choose not to. You can choose to have a thought that's negative, unless obviously there's something that you literally have a problem where you can't make the choice. But most of us can make a choice to be positive. We can make a choice to have a glass half full perspective. And if we don't have that perspective right now, you can still step back, pause, have awareness, and choose something different. But your outcome is going to be related to that choice.
100%. And I'm going to play off both of your statements. My parents taught me early on, don't look back in the rearview mirror, whether it's your accomplishments or your failures. You're constantly evolving. You're constantly changing. You're constantly, you're in charge of your fate. You're in charge of your destiny, etc. Don't look backwards, because if you dwell on your accomplishments, you get satisfied. If you dwell on your failures, you're depressed. And so from that, the other big piece again that they taught, back to the respect and being humble and the humility, is you're always learning, and there's always someone that you can learn from, and I've used that throughout my entire career. Again, whether it's somebody that's brand new in a role and I'm interacting with them and I'm trying to coach, teach, train, develop them, educate them on what the role is, the questions they ask, the insight they gives a whole different perspective, and again, helps me continue to evolve and get better. And I love that. And that, quite frankly, gets me jazzed up, and really makes it exciting, which then ties back into your statement on the future, is you truly get to choose your future. And that's a blast. That is, and it's a lot of stuff going on in the world today, a lot of people divisive and things like that, and you hate to see that, because there's so much opportunity that if folks would get outside and get off, certain things and just focus on, back to your point, smiling at each other and doing some of these things, they can control their future so much. And sure. I try to, I tell, there's a lot of young people, we've got some interns that work for us. I've got 3, children that are millennials, that I talk about, you're only limited by your desire and your willingness.
That's right.
And those are the two, I said, if you desire to do more and you're willing to put forth the effort, the sky's the limit. And that's, and I firmly believe that for them, or I wouldn't tell that. And it's actually interesting now as they come back and talk to me about certain things that are going on in their life or their career or whatever. It's fascinating listening to them, because they're learning and they're evolving, and you feel proud, number one, as a parent, but you also feel like, oh, some of the information that I'm imparting on them, they're actually realizing as well. And they're actually starting to see perspective, which is nice.
That really is nice. And, it's so true. Like opportunity, it is everywhere. And
Yes.
one of the cool things that's come out of doing this show is, I mean, I've met a lot of people who are very successful, in the traditional terms of what people say is success.
Right.
And there's very common threads that they all have, all of them. And the things you've said are the things I hear from most people who have achieved some form of not just material success, but also personal success, family and relationships. And it's always the same things. And it's hard work, it's perseverance. But when you mention opportunity, that's something that I've also noticed where there's some people just can see opportunity and they don't have the blinders on. And I believe partially those blinders are the programs that are all drilled into our heads as we're growing up, which cause you to, like, kind of, as we get older, to lose the creativity, to kind of get squished into some box that you decide you're going to go to college, you're going to be an accountant, and you're going to do this for 30 years and retire. Well, that's very confining. There's nothing about that that's open and creative unless your mindset is to see, well, I can build an accounting practice, I can expand, I can have other locations, I can diversify. But the thing that gets in the way, that is fear. It's fear
100%.
of all the things that could happen, because everybody around you is a naysayer. They're all telling you why you shouldn't do it. And by the way, they haven't done it themselves, but they're happy to tell you that you shouldn't do it. And so it's like, it's kind of sucks the energy out of you. And so you forget how to see opportunities. And that's something that I hear from a lot of people I speak to who don't have that problem. I see opportunity everywhere. In fact, it's too much. Sometimes I have to say, wait, I can't do all this stuff. And so entrepreneurs that I know and people who are successful in business, in corporate America, they tend to have these characteristics where they see things other people don't see. Have you noticed that?
Agree with you wholeheartedly. I would be singing hallelujah and everything else, but it is a opportunity comes disguised as hard work sometimes, and a lot of times you see the individuals, and I've had people come to me, and it's so funny. I loved what you said, where sometimes you have to stop yourself, because I look around all the time. I can't hardly go anywhere without my wife reeling me in, going, yeah, you don't need to tell them how to do their job, or they're not interested in you helping, where we're out shopping or out interacting, because I'm naturally curious. I'm naturally, trying to understand, oh, okay, this, we've gone to this hotel and I'm talking to, the desk clerk or something like that. And I'm learning, what they do. And I go, well, that's fascinating, and things like that. And my continuous improvement mind is constantly working with them, because like you, I see, oh, well, there's opportunity there. Well, you could do this, and you could do this, or whatever. And she's like, honey, you don't work for the hotel chain. Stop, or you don't work for this retailer, stop, and starts reeling me back in. But it's that opportunity. In my career, I've had folks come to me and say, hey, and it's funny, because it used to be a joke. We used to always say, myself, some of my peers and all that, when the sentence starts with, hey, I've got an opportunity for you, that was code for, I'm going to give you a lot more responsibility, but I'm not going to pay you any more money. and
America.
Yeah. And so, but it was those opportunities, again, going all the way back to that continuous improvement, you take on that responsibility. And to your point, it's not always about getting a little more money, getting a little more raise, getting a little title, getting something like this. Sometimes it's about rounding yourself out. And I think of the experiences that I gained by taking on roles, or taking on initiatives, or taking on projects. I looked at it like, one, it was an honor, but two, it's going to make me a lot better individual, so that when there is the opportunity for me to potentially go for a better title or a promotion or something like this, one, I've got this on my record and my resume, but two, I'm building my confidence. I'm gaining a more rounded perspective of what this role will take. And so I've always enjoyed that personally.
And you're putting the time in, and that's really interesting. I can relate to that because even when I was, doing the lowest level, jobs that ultimately led to me owning my own company into what I have today, it started somewhere. And I was aware at that time, like I remember thinking, I got to put the time in, but I got to take this opportunity to learn as much as I can. And in every single role I had, every single job I had, I learned from it. I didn't really know where it was going to go. You can't predict that to that degree, but I knew the entire time while everybody else was complaining around me or doing the bare minimum, or as they call it now, quiet quitting.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the new thing. It's crazy to me.
Fascinating.
It was always the opposite for me. It's like, no, be the first one in, be the last one out, put as much time in as I can because I might not be getting paid a lot, but I'm learning a lot. So they're paying me to go to school. That's how I looked at it. And and as time went on and I got older and I look back now on everything I've learned over the years, I kind of draw on every day. And I own an IT company, but even now I'm not one of the more technical people. I'm the owner of the company. When I have engineers who are dealing with a problem and they're overthinking and they're in the weeds, I'll just be like, wait, hold on a second. Let's just zoom out and say, well, what's the actual problem? Let's just do some basic critical thinking. And it's never necessarily a technical. I mean, the answer ultimately is technical, but the mindset, the approach to solving the problem I'm noticing is being very much missed. The experience that I had coming up is different than the experience I'm seeing in the younger generation that's coming up behind me. Information is at your fingertips. So all the hard work that we did, all the time we had to put in, which sticks with you and creates the wisdom, you can fast forward that. Now you could just skip it. You could just get answers on Google, but you're not really learning the theory and understanding how to see things that nobody else sees because you never had to go through it. That makes sense.
It's a lost art. It's here's the good news. I'm still a firm believer that 75-80% of what we'll call them the younger generation still has that same desire and still wants to learn and still wants to grow and develop. To what you're saying, we do have to continue to educate. We do have to develop. We do have to, again, coach, teach, train. But I do see it there because I see it even the folks that we work with, that we talk with. I see it in my own children and their friends and how they're approaching it. But it's the old can't see the forest for the trees adage, that sometimes folks get in there and it's, you kind of want to say time out, back up, let's look up what is the problem. Let's solve the problem. Then we can deep dive and diagnose and the problem is, person A is trying to ride in the car and get over here to this location by this time, and the car's not working. Okay, so let's get person A over to the location. We've solved the problem. Now we can go back and take the car apart and figure out what's going on. Right, exactly.
Right.
And unfortunately, too many folks, to your point, dive into, my cell phone's not working. I don't have a signal. I don't have Wi-Fi. It's the end of the world. I can't Google it. Whatever the situation is, where stop, slow down, breathe, pause, and reflect. Pick your term, and step back and let's actually solve the problem. Then diagnose the issue. And there's not enough of that. And it's in it. But the good news is that's teachable. That's
teachable.
And it's
totally teachable.
Yeah, it's something you can do.
This is totally off subject, and we are going back to that's not off subject, but we're going down a rabbit hole, but it's very cool. And we're going to go back to your journey. I went back to school night the other night. I have an 11-year-old, I have a 14-year-old, but the where I live, the public schools are okay.
Right.
They're okay. But so my younger one, we put into a private school, and we did a lot of research, and it's a private school. It's owned by a company that's like a global company. And so when we go back to school night, and the second class, we had to walk through like all 7 classes, like kind of take the journey of the day, but 7 minutes each. And we get to the class where the English teacher is, an English teacher is taking us through the things that he's teaching that aren't necessarily the things that are in the book. He's teaching critical thinking. And he explained to us that one, he emails the kids every day, and part of their routine is they have to respond because he's teaching them how to properly write an email. I was like, thank God.
Right.
But he also was talking about that part of the culture there, which is one of the reasons we like this school, is that it's okay to have an opinion, but you need to be able to back the opinion up with information, with facts. You got to do some research. You can't just have an opinion and say, because I think so. And he was explaining how that he pushes the kids to really like not just have a thought, but have data behind that thought that actually validates it. And I'm like, wow. And I said to my wife, I'm like, that's why we moved her. The education that she's getting is, and he also said it's preparing her for things that are really important. And the teacher also pointed out that they're teaching the kids how to have executive thinking. She's 11 years old, but it's part of the entire curriculum is executive thinking. It's critical thinking, and it's all these things. I'm like, wow, I didn't learn any of this in school. I had to learn it in the real world. And thank God that they're teaching this in school to the kids, and it's not being taught in public school, which is a shame.
It is.
So it was off topic, but it just kind of was about teaching. And it was about like those skills are the skills you need.
And you'll laugh, but it's life. It's unfortunately, we don't always do the best job of preparing our young people for life. To your point, we don't. Sometimes it's the old, oh well, they've turned 18. They're either going to go to college or they're going to go out and have a trade or a job or something like that. And you say, good luck. We'll see you. And it's funny you mentioned that. As you were telling that story, when we were in high school, I went to a very small high school. We actually had a speech and debate program. And again, when I tell you we have small, I graduated with 65, 70 kids. I mean, it was a small.
That's really small.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But we were a national powerhouse in speech and debate. Now, because I went to a small school, I was able to do sports, and I actually did choir, and I did science club, but I did speech and debate. And one of the things, it's so funny you mentioned that about the critical thinking with your daughter's class is those speech and debate classes taught us how to formulate discussions and arguments with facts, because you had to have them because the other team was going to come back and rebut what you say and things like that. But they were coming back with facts as well. And so it taught us how to have that interaction. And I still credit that today, 40 years later to 35 years later, I help myself here, but to how I'm able to interact with people and have discussions, because you're spot on is here's why I think we should do something, and here's my rationale behind it. And you're basically presenting your argument, but you're doing it in a professional manner. You're doing and that allows for discussion and people to be comfortable providing input and giving discussion. And that's huge because, as you know, in today's world, everybody's emotional. I grew up in the time where the old saying was sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. Now, if I say the wrong word, people are in tears and enraged, and it's the craziest thing that you see. And the world has evolved into where we're not teaching those critical skills. And by the way, I would say the same thing from a finance and economics perspective.
For sure.
We had a savings account when we were young, and you remember the old little passbook that you would get where you'd deposit your $2 and you'd write your $2 in and you'd add it up, but it taught you finances, and nothing goes on. None of that's taught. It's not learned because everything is through the phone.
They don't teach you any of that. And that's the old, I don't know if you know Robert Kiyosaki with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. I mean, that's his whole, it's true. I mean, they don't teach you any of the things in school that you actually need to know. They just prepare you to go work somewhere. But, and I'm going to make an assumption, but your kids, maybe like mine, they see me, like I was up at 5 o'clock today. My daughter came downstairs for school at 6 o'clock. I was already an hour into working, and she sees me working, and it goes on all day. And, she sees me working nights and weekends. I mean, granted, I do it at my own pace and my own timing, as an owner, but the example is being set that this is the way it is. If you really want to have more than what somebody else is going to say you're allowed to have, you have to create it on your own. And to create it on your own, you have to have everything you said, which is discipline. You have to also be able to work hard. So they've seen it in my house. I'm sure your kids saw it in your house.
100%.
But on top of that, they also see me investing in real estate. They see me doing finance.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I brought them into it, and I show them like how to do it. And so they have a mindset where they understand that this stuff goes on, and you need to understand it.
Right.
My other entrepreneurial friends, I know that their homes are similar in that way. Right. But the sad part is, I don't know, I'm making this up, 90% of the people out there aren't entrepreneurs, whatever that number is. And so for those of us that have that spirit, our kids grow up in a different type of home, information-wise. For everybody else, it's whatever they're teaching you in school, and they're not teaching you anything in school.
Well, and it's a double-edged sword, because they don't understand back to we talked before, what the opportunity could be.
That's right.
What is that value? What is that opportunity? Because they aren't learning it in school, and they may not be getting it in their home either.
Yeah.
And then not only once they're exposed to the opportunity, they don't understand the value. It's hard for somebody that doesn't understand how hard you have to work to buy your first home, or to purchase a vehicle, or even something like a vacation. And I, hearing the age of your kids, but there is, there's what is it? Probably 8-year age gap between our oldest and our youngest, between the three kids. And, and by the way, it was same. I was the youngest in my family. So my older brother thought I was entitled, but my older children think my youngest child is more entitled, because they came along in the world and grew up when we had more as a family, and more things were available. And when you went on vacations, or you went out to dinner, we moved up from eating at the Chili's restaurant to a little bit nicer restaurant. Nothing against Chili's, but we
say that.
Yeah, exactly. But we. I
love Chili's, by the way.
I do too. I'd go there every time if it was up to me. But
Rocco's Tacos where I live. That's a great place too. Rocco's Tacos.
Rocco's Tacos. But you just evolve, and so to your point, if there's not perspective in your household in what you do, or they're learning at school, then they don't necessarily understand how to achieve those and what the value is and things like that. And it's so true. It's really important to teach.
It's so true. In that gap too, like my older daughter, who's 14, when she was young, we still didn't have anything. Like, I was still kind of making it happen. And she remembers, we didn't have nice cars. We didn't live in a big home. Like, she remembers what it was like. And so she's experienced the change. My younger daughter is only 3 years difference. That 3 years, things had happened quickly for me because I had been working so hard for so long. It finally hit. She doesn't know the difference. Like, I've asked her before, I'm like, do you remember this? She doesn't remember. And she just remembers always having what she needed.
Right.
And having a different type of life, and having larger homes and having nicer cars. And the two of them have very different memories of that period in their life.
Our two boys are 2 years apart. And it's funny because my older son, both of them are pretty good little athletes, but my older son remembers he got a bat, to play baseball, and got his glove and all that stuff. And that's what he had for a while. My younger son played travel baseball, had a bat bag, full of, $300 composite baseball bats. He had like 4 of them or something like that. And I look back on that and go, we were crazy. To your point, they're 2 years apart, and the difference in timing and age of when things, begin to hit and happen, in my life, in our life, uh, you know, he sees the differences from when he did things, as a young person to when our youngest one did it, and of course, our daughter's like, yeah, let me tell you about tough times, So you think they were impoverished, and barefoot,
Right. Yeah, I don't want. I think the message here. I just want to bring out the message. We've been fortunate, but not fortunate in that we've been lucky. We've been fortunate in that we and this is the message that everybody should take from this. We've been fortunate in that we came up in an environment that was about hard work and discipline,
Right.
and so what you've created, what I've created for ourselves, but for our families, and the things that we have now, they are the byproduct of all the hard work and all the time and all the patience and all the learning and seeing the opportunities and failing and losing. That's what gets us here. And by the way, here is just this exact moment. There's no stopping. It's the other message that the show is about is reaching our potential. And so as people listen to this and hear you and I kind of talk about how we're enjoying things now and how our kids are enjoying things now, well, there's a journey to get there. And if you're fortunate enough to get it the old way and you inherit it, great. But
Right.
I certainly didn't. And coming from very, very humble, to me, I would consider poor beginnings. There was no other choice other than to make what I wanted to happen. And at that time, it was for me. But then as you get older, it's not just about you. It's about the family you're building. It's about your children and maybe a legacy. But
Right.
all of it requires everything that you've said since we've been in this conversation. All of it. Nobody's going to hand it to you. And our kids, even though they're living maybe a certain way now, I can speak for myself, and I'm sure it's the same for you. They're still being taught to the best of our ability, those same values, just in a different way.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
No, I would agree, and we constantly have this conversation, as a family. But I also, I share it with my peers and folks I work with. It can all go away. This is, and I love the term you use, journey. We're all on a journey, and we know we've been blessed. Okay, we know it came from hard work. We know it came from a lot of effort. But we also know with every hard work and effort, I don't want to use the term lucky, but you set yourself up for more opportunities. And so if you call that luck, okay, so be it. But through your efforts, through your desire, through your drive, through your striving to be the best that you can be, more doors and more opportunities potentially are opened for you to do that.
And you recognize them and you take them.
That's exactly
Other
right.
people call that luck because they see the outcome, but they don't know what you did. Oh, you're lucky.
Right.
I'm not lucky. I saw the opportunity, and I wasn't afraid to. Maybe I was afraid, but I pushed through and I jumped on it.
Right.
And you see it as luck, but it wasn't.
My wife and I and our children, when they were very young, we moved 9 times in 16 years in the retail business. Okay, a lot of people didn't do that. A lot of folks didn't take those opportunities. Hey, we've got a role for you. Hey, we've got a promotion. Oh, I don't want to move. I want to stay here. I want to be next to my family, or I like where I live, or whatever it was. We discussed it while the children were young. It was much easier to make some of those decisions and make those moves and do some of those tasks because it helped create the path that for the journey. And we absolutely did that. And again, I don't know that I would call it lucky, but every opportunity led to the next opportunity and the next opportunity. And by the way, every choice we made wasn't the right choice. And sometimes you found yourself, well, darn it, I should have turned left instead of turned right. But now you adjust, you fix it, and you go on, because if you stay in the pattern, the next opportunity is going to come up, and you've educated yourself on making a better decision. And you're 100% right. And we're still on the journey. And I absolutely tell our children, nothing's free. Nobody's going to hand you anything.
Right.
And if you want it, you better be willing to go work for it.
It sounds, especially with all the moves. And by the way, as we wind this down, we need to, after this, we need to go back to just take me through actually, you did a lot of moving as a kid, and you continue to move, and you really did some pretty cool things. So I want to step back and let you kind of take us through that.
Sure.
But you must be comfortable being uncomfortable, which I find is an interesting and important characteristic too, which to me is what changes. I mean, you have to change in order to kind of keep moving forward, which means you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And you seem like you're fine with that.
It's funny. People, again, a whole industry was born out of HR and human resources called change management.
Right.
And I, to your point, I used to tell people all the time, change is constant. And it was the running, joke earlier, here comes the train down the track. You've got two choices. You can stand in front of it, and we know how that ends, or you can choose to hop on and take the ride. And
okay.
we've my wife and I, and as family, we've chosen to hop on the train every time, and let's see where it takes us. And so far, again, very, very fortunate. And again, doesn't mean there aren't some stops along the way, like I said, where it's maybe it wasn't as ideal as we thought it was going to be, but we learned from it. We made the best of it, and we evolved as we went forward. So agree with you, again, wholeheartedly with how you described it. Such
a great message. All right. So like 40 minutes ago, you began telling me that your dad was in the military, in intelligence, and the influence your mom had on you. Just take us through that to now, everything, all the important stuff.
Sure. So, and I'll cut me off as I, go through if you need to cut me off, if I get too long-winded or you want to throw in questions.
Okay.
So my dad left home at a young age, joined the military, joined the Air Force. He wound up becoming a crewman for the U-2 airplanes, and which were the spy planes. And if you've heard of, probably the most famous was Gary Powers. And there's actually a movie called Bridge of Spies, Tom Hanks movie, great movie. That kind of shadows my my dad's, a little bit of my dad's military career, but my and I'd say military, that was at that point he was in the intelligence field, and my dad always had a crew cut. When he passed away, he had a crew cut. He was just that way. He kept everything extremely close to the vest, extremely disciplined. His shoes were shined until he was well into his 80s. It was his everything had a place. Everything was put away. It was just a very structured environment. But what was really neat about that growing up is it taught you hard work, discipline, structure, etc. And I am so thankful for that aspect that he provided. And then my mom, while he was away for so long, again doing the stuff in the U-2, doing stuff Vietnam, and even subsequent tours after that, there were a lot of times where it was just the family. It was her and the three boys, and then we would move. We actually moved a couple of times where we actually moved off of the military base, and when he was doing intelligence stuff, we weren't able to be on the military base, so we moved home with my grandparents. My grandparents lived out on a farm and had a couple hundred acres, and you learned hard work and farm life, and you learned things like that. You mentioned your upbringing and coming from humble beginnings, and that was I feel there was a lot of that from my perspective. I watched my grandfather get up literally 4 a.m., go out, feed the cattle, tend to the other, livestock and animals, and then go out on the farm. And he was on the tractor by, 6:00, 6:30. He'd come in for lunch, and then he was back out till dark. And so you see that, and you see those examples, and you see how hard people work. That instills that in you. So again, when my father came back, we went back to the military bases. We were doing more of those things. And once we retired, we actually retired to, southern Oklahoma. And, I mentioned before, went to a small high school, was blessed to get to do a lot of different things there, a lot of different sports, a lot of different, speech, debate, drama, those type of things. So I felt it rounded me out from my personality. It helped develop me into the person I was. Went to college, started with, true story, started working for Eckerd Drugs when I was a freshman in college. I had two brothers who were store managers and two sister-in-laws who were store managers. And I went there to work for beer money for spring break. And you'll appreciate this. So all four of them said, "Don't embarrass us." That was their advice for me starting to work there. And I started with them. And when I started, I did a lot of stuff. I worked as what was called a pony driver, which was you drive from store to store and balance merchandise. Back in the old days, a customer would go to store A and they'd need something, and they'd call store B, and you drive the little van over to store B and bring it to store A and do that. And I still remember I was making $2.35 an hour.
Ooh,
so
there you go.
Good money. So really enjoyed that aspect of it. But while I was still in college in the summers, I would, work and try to spend more time, doing that, earning money. Well, I started on the remodel team because they would give you a per diem, which was the craziest thing in the world. I'd never heard of that as a young college kid. And wait, you're going to give me a certain amount of money for food each week, and we would travel around Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, doing all these store renovations, and it was great. And it was camaraderie, teamwork, all the things that you kind of like to do. It was other kind of kids your age and kind of your mindset. It was hard work. We'd work 12 or 14 hours a day, but when you're 20, 21, not a big deal. And oh, by the way, they're giving you that per diem. So it didn't always get spent on food. Sometimes it got spent on libations that were actually kind of fun after work. And so a great time, great experience. Got out of college, stayed with Eckerd, moved down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and that's when it started. I wound up taking all the skills that I had learned by doing a lot of the different jobs that I'd done while I was in college with them, and wound up bouncing around and became assistant regional project manager in Dallas. Then I had the opportunity to go to North Florida, the Orlando office, where I became the regional project manager. And then I wound up becoming the project manager for all of Florida. Then I became a district manager over in Tampa. And again, it was all of those opportunities where you moved around from city to city, opportunity to opportunity. And it always started, I mentioned before, it always started with that conversation. Have I got an opportunity for you? Which was, again, followed by something maybe that you didn't want to do, or maybe that you had to make a decision on, and you wound up doing it. And it opened a ton of doors for me. I was very blessed to have amazing mentors, throughout my, career. I was with Eckerd for about 18, almost 19 years. Had some amazing mentors. I quite frankly, I would have retired at Eckerd had we not been sold to CVS in the early 2000s. And when that happened, it was an opportunity for me to go do something else, still pretty young. And we decided to go to work at Family Dollar up in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I took that opportunity. True statement, I had never even been in a Family Dollar, had never seen one, it was not something that I had ever really thought about. When you work in retail, you don't spend a lot of time shopping,
Right.
at other retailers and doing other stuff. I'm like, I'm in stores all the time. I know what they look like. so went up to Charlotte again. Some inspirational leaders, some really inspiring folks. Howard Levine was the CEO at the time, and you met him and a gentleman named Jim Kelly, who was the president. During my interview process, I actually interviewed with both of them over a 2-day period, probably interviewed with 10 other folks, but I was struck at how personable and how genuine they both were. And they were talking no different than we're having a conversation.
Right.
It was amazing, to think that these folks in these roles with their record of success, how humble they were, what great leaders they were, how passionate they were about their business, that it was inspiring. And by the time I'd flown back home to South Florida, I actually had an offer letter waiting. It was probably a 30-minute discussion with my wife, and she said, let's go. So we went up to Charlotte, worked with the Family Dollar team for 12 years, and we then went through the largest merger acquisition in the history of the United States. Dollar Tree acquired Family Dollar. Took us up to at that time about 15,000 locations, which were more locations than anybody else in North America.
What was your role though when you went there? I don't think you mentioned that.
I'm sorry. So when I went to work at Family Dollar, I was vice president. I was actually vice president of process improvement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of process improvement at Family Dollar, only because they didn't have an operational role available at that time. So they brought me into the corporate office initially for about 6 months, and we worked on some process improvement, loss prevention, point of sale, some of those type of areas. Then after about 6 months, I took responsibility for the kind of the northeastern United States. True story, at one time I had 7 of the top 10 crime cities. So it was there were weeks where I would visit locations, and it was some tough weeks, but it was okay. And again, what it goes back to is great people control what you can control. You're in charge of the 4 walls. Every day, you get up and you choose your attitude. And I, again, very fortunate to have tremendous folks on my team, from the district managers, from the store managers, all the way down to those front end cashiers. And what was really interesting is when I took over that particular area, we had the highest turnover in the company. And generally that happens when you replace somebody. You're generally not going somewhere where it's been running great. You're replacing them for a reason.
Right.
And one of the things that I mentioned, at the time, and this was contrary to how a lot of folks would structure it, is our HR person, was like, well, you need to fill out all these forms and you need to list all these reasons why people are leaving and do all this. And there was a litany of paperwork. And I shared with her, I said, well, they're leaving because they don't like working here. So why don't you let me go out and visit stores and work with the staff and work with the team and talk to them, and I'll bring you all the feedback back in the world. And literally after, and I still view this, I've had a lot of success with P&Ls and financials and operating good markets and things like that. But after about 4 months, we went from, again, the bottom, highest turnover, bottom of all the areas in the company, to we quickly moved up, and we won for 3 consecutive quarters. We won the most improved, lowest turnover, all the HR goals and rankings and all that. And again, what I tried to, and ultimately when I got promoted into corporate, I worked to change this for the whole organization. But it wasn't about having your field leadership, your district managers, your regional vice presidents, et cetera, all sitting in an office and filling out paperwork. It was about having them actually going out into the stores It was actually about having them going out and visiting the folks on the front lines and actually understanding, hey, what are their problems? What are their issues? What are we doing that's making their life more difficult? What are we doing that's making it tougher for them to accomplish what we're asking them to accomplish? And back to that continuous improvement mindset. So we spent a lot of time doing that, and the results spoke for themselves. After I did that for about 1.5 years, 2 years, I came into the office, came back in that time again as VP of Process Improvement. They rolled all the workforce management under me, all the compliance under me. Did that for about a year or so. Then they came to me and said, hey, we'd love you to do procurement also. So that was, again, another one of those opportunities where we want to give you more responsibility, but no extra. We're going to give you a fancier title, you know. So it was again, great experience. Learned, had a whole different department, whole different group of individuals in addition to the workforce management team and the process improvement team. Then we rolled facilities, repair and maintenance, utilities, electricity, gas, etc. That whole group rolled under. Then about a year after that, we rolled store development under. So we had all the people that were doing new stores, and honestly, that was probably one of the. I enjoyed it because of my background at Eckerd with the remodels, but during Family Dollar days, we were doing 500 new stores a year. We were doing 500 to 700 renovations and about 150 relocations. So we were doing anywhere between 12 and 1,500 projects on an annual basis.
And you oversaw all that.
I oversaw all that. Yeah.
Do you remember how many people you had that were ultimately under your supervision?
So direct supervision, probably 35, 40 people. Under the whole umbrella, thousands. But in the store development world, we had 100 project managers out in the field, to do that many projects. And then obviously we had a great organization, there in the office. But I tell you, it was a well-oiled machine. A lot of amazing folks that worked on the team, and it really, you talk about the continuous improvement and in keeping your juices flowing, and how do you get better, and how do you do it more efficiently, less expensively, turn out a better finished product, etc. Loved that. That's some of the best brainstorming sessions that I ever had in any company, and it was one of those things that just. It really got you jazzed up to go in every day, knowing that you could work on some of those things. It was because you're starting with, if it's a new store, you're starting with a pile of dirt, and if it's a renovation, you're basically, emptying the store, completely gutting the store and coming back. So you got such a sense of accomplishment, when you had the finished, product, and you were able to, a lot of pride in the team members that did it, a lot of pride in the team members you were turning it over to, but a ton of pride in the community that were customers that were shopping there. It was really cool. Really cool.
Were your parents alive to see this, where it all went to for you?
Funny story. Yes, they were. I'm looking here because I know I have it in here. It's not handy. So my first job, I was a bag boy at Winn-Dixie when I was 14 years old. And you could take tips back then, by the way. So you were jazzed if you got 50 cents. Most people would give you a quarter. But I was a bag boy to Winn-Dixie in my small town was Marietta, Oklahoma. And that Winn-Dixie became a Family Dollar.
Oh, wow.
30 years later. And so my parents actually sent me, and I have it framed somewhere, and I'm actually going to get choked up, but they sent me a little thing, it was one of those where you were, where you are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was a picture of the Winn-Dixie to a picture of the Family Dollar.
So cool.
And it was, your life spans, that was, at that time it was, I was probably 20 plus years into that, between my career at Eckerd and then into Family. That was really cool. And so they were both alive at that time. And it's one of those things where, it's just a subtle framed thing, and they weren't doing it for anything other than, it was their way of saying, hey, we're proud of you. But it was kind of neat. It was kind of a very sentimental.
Thanks for answering that, because as you're talking, and I'm thinking of everything that you're talking about that you've done and you've achieved, especially towards that part of the career. Towards that part of the career, I'm thinking about all these words I wrote down that came from your upbringing, and then being on a farm, and you just kept doing the same thing you knew how to do. It was just a different setting,
right?
And for that, as a parent, to be able to step back and wow, like they saw this whole journey. They were working to try and instill beliefs in you and values, and it worked. And then to see where that all went as you got to be, as you matured in business and in life. That's why I asked that question, because that must have been, you can imagine it's a very rewarding feeling for them. And of course they acknowledge it by sending you something. That's really cool. That's very cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And interesting, because of my father and how stoic he was, that was the extent of the
that's it. You got a frame
the joyous celebration.
That was a hug.
Yeah, that was it did. It really did. We used to joke, with my wife and my brother's wives and things like that, because they viewed my dad as this big teddy bear, and he's such a nice guy, and all this, and he truly was. But it was a completely different personality than what we grew up with and what we knew for all those years, and it was refreshing to see his transformation, because of all the stuff that he instilled.
Sure.
Even now, I look back on that and go, "Oh, I see personality traits. I see things." But he, back to your point, doing the same thing over and over. He taught us that. And you learned that, and that's how you became successful, and that's how he was successful. But he also there was a person behind the person, that you saw, which loved to see, which was so enjoyable.
We have to wind it down. There's one thing that you didn't bring up. If you can just give us the 30-second of what you're doing right now.
Sure, love to. So Energy Zero Solutions. We're essentially a consulting company for customers, for the client. We don't sell anything. What we do is we come in and we actually assess or understand from the customer or the client what their goals are from an energy and sustainability perspective. That could be, we want to be the greenest company out there. We want to save the most green. We want to save the most money. We want to do a combination of both. We just want to be more efficient because we've got to put it in our prospectus, whatever those different things are. And then what we do is we do an assessment. We do some site surveys. We take their data, and then we come back to them based on all of our experience. We've got a very good group of talented individuals, and we basically come back to them and say, here's our recommendations based on what you want to do as a company. Here's how we recommend you approach it. Here's how we recommend you roll it out. And then we offer the support / project management from a turnkey perspective that will coordinate with the vendors for you. We're agnostic. We whether it vendor A or vendor B, we don't care. We negotiate with all of them because we have the bandwidth, we have the experience, and we know what they should be doing. And that's how we approach it. And we love it. We operate in all 50 states. We actually are doing some projects in Europe right now for a couple of clients. We have a lot of emerging technologies. So we're open for business. We've got our shingle hung up, and we're ready to do business anywhere in the world.
It's awesome. Like, you're taking everything you've done and now you're just applying it to something else, and it's going to be really successful. It's just going to be an extension of what you've already been doing.
Well, thank you.
Listen, this has been, I actually had to cut us off because I think you and I probably could keep going for another hour.
Yeah. There's always, episode 2 somewhere.
I actually did that with somebody a few weeks ago because it got to be just like this, and I didn't want to stop it. So we actually had to chop it into 2-hour-long episodes. But the thing is, you jumped into this today, and like for me, it was kind of out of character to not do what we did at the end. We talked about your story. Usually we do that first. You and I just got right into like so much valuable information. So I hope a lot of people see this, and it may not be today. It could be a year from now. Whenever somebody, people stumble onto this or find us, this is a great episode. It was nonstop. You had one piece of information after the other, and it's all valuable. So I do want to thank you for taking the time and hopefully we reach people and help people, Yeah,
no, agreed. And it is about giving back. And it truly is, and again, it's, without getting, too corny and cliche, but it truly is, if we can help folks and make them better, it's amazing. People laugh. One quick thing, I'm very blessed to have accomplished what I've done in business. I actually really enjoy growing up and all that. I get so much more pleasure out of watching my kids accomplish stuff, watching, I still remember my oldest son when he was playing t-ball and he ran around the bases and first time he scored and he stuck his hands up and goes, touchdown. And of course, all the parents laugh. I laughed because I was so proud he scored, but it was like, oh, he likes football too. So, but it's it's those memories that you do it for. So part of the giving back, we can accomplish all we want. If we don't share it or talk to people about it, then it's really not worth it.
Wow, that's well said. I end every show by saying something, and I'm going to say it now, but you exemplify the 3 words I'm going to say. And everybody who's watching this, you have to take this from today: be humble, hustle, and you have to do the work. And this is, it came up 50 times today in 50 different ways. That is a requirement. So before we completely end the show, was there anything you want to share? Just a way for people to reach you? Do you want anybody to know anything about your company, website, anything?
Sure. You can reach us at energyzerosolutions.com. That's our website, and you can get on and get a little bit of information about how we are or how we perform and what we do. And then if you just want to email us, it's info@energyzerosolutions.com, and we're happy to take all of your information and we'll get back to you. So
excellent. And all of that information, you can see it down below in the description. So just go down there and you'll be able to see all that. So listen, again, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. And
thank you, Matt. Enjoyed it.
There might have to be a second episode. I want to find out what happens with your new company.
The sequel's even better.
Perfect. All right, my friend. We'll talk very soon. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great day.